Third-party risk management is such a wide and diverse topic. So I'll try and be as focused as I possibly can be with you all. But it's a pleasure to join on stage with you again. I believe we were on stage last year, weren't we, for the second iteration of the Security Middle East Conference. Now, my first question is, we'll start wide and then we'll focus in. But Dr. Faisal, I'd like to come to you first with how significant is third-party risk management for security and, in fact, in your role today in the Middle East?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me, Danielle, here in this panel discussion. To be honest, I would say the risk management or third-party risk management, it's the critical part in cybersecurity and how to deal with these issues or, let's say, risks around the world or in Saudi Arabia in particular. The things is, it's a critical, Daniel, to be said. Like sometimes it's based on the organizations and the size of the organization and what the organizations deal with. It is like a government organization or semi-government or private sectors. Some of them they said okay, they involve the security or cyber security. Some of them they involve the procurement and the legal. And in my view, I believe it's like a shared responsibilities between the three departments. And in my view, also, I believe the third party risk management should be led by the GRC, and to ensure the consistency between all the departments.
That quite nicely brings me on to my next question. Is it moves into the sort of regulatory demands, and I'm conscious there's quite a lot of regulatory requirements in the Middle East and in Europe and in the US that specify good or better third-party risk management and having visibility of risk across the supply chain. And as a regulatory expert, Betania, I'd love to come to you. What regulatory demands have you seen that have forced organizations you work with to improve third-party risk management?
That's a wonderful question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for the organization of this wonderful event, for having me here for the second year in a row. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. So, well, third-party risk management, it is naturally a critical issue. In Saudi Arabia in particular, with the digital transformation advancing at such a fast pace with Vision 2030 projects, outsourcing pretty much everything from cloud to AI. It has become that the risks is beyond our walls more than ever, right? So regulatory bodies like NCA, SEDAIA, with PDPL, with ECC frameworks, etc., while they require strong vendor oversight, there is an evolution. I had the privilege of being a contributor for the global AI hub law here in Saudi. It is expected to be a foundational regulation for any AI service, like offering, or operating actually within national hubs. So it actually introduces three specific AI vendor obligations that I wanted to share with you. One of them is disclosure of risk classification, and the audit of standards, as well as compliance with ethical AI governance. I totally second what Brother Faisal was saying in having a partnership approach, a holistic approach, cross-functional team functions. And I think that in that sense, the bar is rising, while here we see a lot of investment in, smart services. I think that there is also a lot of decision from the top down to, see what's going on in other countries, in other jurisdictions, what's working, and what kind of best practices we can bring here, while we take also in consideration the complexities in Saudi and also the cultural aspects.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's clear that the regulators are starting to take this challenge more seriously, being a bit more prescriptive with what organizations should do. I think the reality, though, is some organizations may not be taking it as seriously as one would imagine. And I'd love to come to yourself, Dr. Nasser, because I assume you're hands-on with this type of challenge. Do the businesses or the C-suite that you speak with, do they understand the challenge that third-party risk management presents? And if they needed convincing, what kinds of narratives do you paint to get investment or to change the position that you're currently in?
Thank you, Daniel. First of all, assalamu alaikum. I'm so glad to be part of this fantastic panel discussion with my colleagues. Back to your question, Daniel, this is a fantastic question. I believe that, CISO level, sometimes, they report to the, or they engage to, every single meeting with the higher management. And, sometimes you should present this as a high level critical, report. They do understand what you present, but sometimes you need to convince how risks are these, how we implement this one, how we should do. Sometimes they talking about the higher management meetings. They do care about strategic. They do care about budgeting. They do care about something that's more high level than what risk you have in the organizations. But I believe sometimes if you present like a logic report with some proof of concept that we might have risk and we should take this into considerations with other stakeholders. Talking about the cybersecurity department isn't enough to do everything, so you should engage other stakeholders. If you're talking about the law department, the procurement department, the other regulatory and compliance requirements that need to be in one meeting.
Okay, thank you. Now, my next question sort of leans into the resilience space because, it's kind of inevitable that cyber attacks will happen in the supply chain in some capacity. And I guess it's our responsibility to be agile, responsive, and manage crises when they do occur. So Dr. Faisal, are there any kind of lessons learned that you have around third-party risk management or third-party crisis management that you might want to share with the audience?
This is a big, to be honest, and critical topic, especially with the resilience of the supply chains and so on. So we have experience with COVID-19, so how things goes during the pandemic. So the things is we need to ensure the business continuity, and the things is also the sensitive data, how to be delivered in the good way. Especially in the Middle East regions, we have faced a lot of issues, especially with the geopolitics and so on. So I think the resilience of the supply chain is very critical. But we need to have some regulation to have a good resilience, and especially with the experience during the pandemic, during the 4 years or 5 years ago.
And if you allow me to add, I would like to stress again, like the importance of cross-functional teams to involve legal, to involve cybersecurity, to involve procurement, vendors, teams across jurisdictions. That is also extremely important to make sure that, everyone is involved, everyone takes a seat, and we're able to, bring a solution as fast as possible.
Yeah, there's I'll try and break the next series of questions down into the third-party management lifecycle, because there's a logic, I would say, to effective third-party risk management, from integrating security requirements into contracts, onboarding new suppliers, classifying suppliers in the right way, maybe building third-party risk assessments depending on the level of criticality, and then how do we monitor over time and make sense of that data. So Dr. Nasser, with the third-party management lifecycle in mind, are there any best practices that you would recommend to improve that process for an organization?
Well, let's say if we, classify the third-party risk management, as we look at it as enterprise risk management, not cybersecurity risks.
Yep.
So we can see that, from other perspective, we can see that, we can, handle it like, if we have like, three classifications that should be considered. It's a pre-contract, during contract, and post-contract. I think this is the most critical thing that should be taken care of during the journey of TBRM.
Okay, and any thoughts from
Yeah,
the other
I
two?
think I would like to add something. So usually the organization, they do the assessment, risk assessment, like twice a year, based on the regulations of NIC or NCA or SADAYA, whatever. So these, it comes mandatory for any organization, and each organization or third party or companies should do also the audit inside, check by themselves. So this is my view. So this is what usually do.
I would add like a layered approach, like impact, transparency, scalability. And we've talked about AI a lot today, and I would like to perhaps bring it a little bit over there. Especially when we're talking about third party, when we bring AI vendors, to make sure that we're asking the right questions, like what are your training data sources? What are your model update cycles? What are your failure risks? These are standard questions in EU AI procurement, but they're going to be starting to be more required here. And to also second what Dr. Faisal was saying, I see from a not that technical perspective how entities usually try to comply because it's what the jurisdiction requires, what the authority requires, but just try to think a little bit beyond what's required, and also what is working out in other places, what is working outside that could benefit my own operational efficiency.
I think a lot of companies struggle with actually, identifying their most critical suppliers and linking that to critical business services or, systems or applications that underpin their business. That for me is always the starting point, is map out your ecosystem and really try and understand, what does criticality mean to us? One of the concepts that a number of the energy companies use is the minimum viable company. So if oil production was completely shut down, what systems would we be critically dependent on? How would we actually pump the oil out of the ground?
What is the contingency plan?
Exactly. So we start moving the conversation away from third-party risk management into business continuity, into crisis management, which can quite nicely bring in other parts of the business, because it's funny, because depending on who you speak to, I think every department will say that their application or their tool is mission critical. It's not always, there's going to be a criticality, but having those workshops and having those discussions is something that needs to happen in order to accelerate and get that visibility. Now, we've spoken a little bit about governance and who owns third-party risk management, and you've mentioned a collaborative approach, but who legitimately owns third-party risk management, in your opinion, or even in your organization? Because you've mentioned it could be procurement, could be legal, could be cyber. But what's the best way that you've seen in your organization?
Well, you mentioned it. So I would say, like, to find a way that all these teams can work together, but they know what they are meant to do, what's their mandate, if you will. So from Saudi and from global experience, what the models that have worked, they have security, looking into the leadership of the technical part, legal and compliance. It's also important for the oversight of regulation and contract terms, and as well procurement, of course, because they're responsible for the life cycle of the management. And for AI vendors, when AI is involved, compliance, risk, and even ethics is important to also have a seat at the table. And even more as things are developing and unfolding in such fast pace, So again, cross-functional teams, beyond technical, it has worked. And Sadaya, here in Saudi, Sadaya-led initiatives are nudging public entities to have this holistic approach. And I think that's worth celebrating. I think that's great.
May I add something also? I would like to add that the owning or can handle these three departments or all the departments. I believe, in my view, there is like a committee led by the GRC. So involve all the departments, procurement, security, legal together, but in one place. And you should define the RASI model, for example, the responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. This is to see to ensure the end-to-end visibilities, especially from vendor, from onboarding to offboarding.
That's amazing. That's a great point, because I've seen cross-functional task forces work really smoothly that are able to involve all these departments in a really nice way.
If you just allow me to add, something that by the way, I totally agree with Dr. Benetli and Dr. Faisal, what have they said. And in my experience, years of experience in cybersecurity as a CISO, I used to be CISO before. I think there is no third-party risk management owner. Everyone is responsible. So a committee, I think this is the best optimal solution that we can work on it and engage each one involved, on third-party risk management. And we should look at it as an enterprise, not a cybersecurity department.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of the work we do at the ISF, we have 500 different companies that we work with. So the governance structures are incredibly different, and there's no perfect fit for what third-party risk management looks like. You may have a company that has a very strong procurement office or very focused on legal, or you may have a risk management or GRC function that's incredibly strong. But I think it's about creating a pragmatic model that empowers whatever division or department it is to perform their independent third-party assessments, but potentially also leveraging other third-party tools as well, that gather open source intelligence and just provide senior management with the visibility they need to make better decisions about third parties. So we've kind of covered off the risk assessment element of that life cycle. What I'd love to focus a little bit more on is what controls can we put in place to put pressure on suppliers to improve their security. Any thoughts on that one?
I would say the SLA, the Surface Level Agreement, this is the most popular. And also the regulations, they should follow the controls as well. And sometimes we need to do the patching in some servers and so on. So there is like a time scale for it. And the escalation matrix, how it goes based on the SLA. This is one of them. I don't know if you share some idea, Dr. Nasser and it.
Yeah, I think that here in Saudi, you have leverage because a lot of vendors want to work with you. So sorry, vendors present, but I would say that locals have a great opportunity to use it to their advantage, to set higher expectations. And include in the SLAs what you are going to be needing to make sure that you cover specific metrics for AI, specifically explainability, fairness, audit, require AI governance documentation, because when things go wrong, and things might go wrong and will probably go wrong, you want to make sure that you have everything well settled. Any ISO IX certifications that might be applicable in the global AI hub law, the draft. These are things that are going to be embedded. They're going to be required as legal obligations, and not just mere optional extras, if you will.
I would say that sometimes if you want to apply TBRM very well, you should take the due diligence into the cycle. The life cycle of the TBRM is an important, and sometimes risk assessment, you cannot apply risk assessment on each third party vendors, suppliers, service provider, and so on. You should customize the risk assessment based on the business needs, based on the risks, based on also the requirement that you need for that assessment. And I believe the monitoring monitoring ongoing due diligence is an important. So it is a challenge, by the way. It's not easy to apply it, and you should consider this, and you will face some resistance from the third party.
Yeah.
I do have experience on that one, by the way. And I have challenges, working on third parties. Sometimes they don't want to do anything like an investigative processes during the journey of TBRM.
Yeah, I mean.